coming to this session. The testing center, I think, is this room in the basement that a lot of people are like, okay, I'm just going to send my students down there to test. And the testing center has seen some changes, and I know when I first started about a year ago, there were some things that they said really could be better. We have new staff down there, so we've really been trying to make this a really good experience for faculty and for our students. So I want to throw out for some numbers, and I want to see if you can guess what these are. Okay, so 12,300 approximately. What do you think that is? You're close, you're close. That is actually the number of students that, about the number of students that attend UNO. Okay? So 14,000. What do you think that number is? Think about testing.
Number of tests you proctored last year?
Number of tests actually proctored at UNO last year. So if I say 1,200, how many, what do you think that number is? Students here. And if I say over 10,000, that's how many tests we proctored last year. I don't think people understand the magnitude and the volume of testers that we have down in the testing center. So it's pretty stressful, okay? And we have one full-time staff and one part-time staff. And a lot of times we have us, me, Brooke, and Kitty filling in. So a lot of times we don't always know what we don't know or what we should know. So I always go into this letting you know that there's a lot of things that we need from you all on the testing side, but we also want to give you some insight to what's going down in the testing center so that we can make it a better experience for everybody. Okay, that's how I feel about math. Today's presentation, we're basically going to go over the testing center email that you all get. I won't go into that too much detail because you get it every semester. I'm going to go over the proctoring form in case there's questions on that and highlight some things. I'm going to talk about 8 tips for a better testing experience for both you and your students. And then Register Blast, which is our new registration tool. And then any questions you guys might have. Okay? And if you have questions throughout, just interrupt me. Okay, so all of you, about this time, it was kind of, I know it's always, you guys are lambasted, like, you have finals, and then you have grading, and then you have grades due, and then the testing center is sending you an email saying, hey, we need your tests for next semester. That's so that over break, the full-time and part-time student can actually put every single test into the system and then also do the scheduling system for every single test. So that's why they ask when they do ask, because they really can't work on it during finals week. You may not be ready during finals week, and that gives them break with a lot of free time and no testers down there to actually have a conversation. Because if any of you have been down there, you have to speak at a whisper. You cannot speak above a whisper. So it's really hard to get jobs done. So it pretty much walks you through what it is that they need. Obviously I put a blank there. They give you a deadline for when they need it. They'll take them, into the first week of classes. Obviously accommodation, student information will come later. And they get that and they'll work with you, but that deadline is again for a reason so that they can get stuff done over the break so that your stuff is lined up to go. Please remember to set your exam passwords. We're going to talk about exam passwords here in a minute because that seems to be a really big thorn in our side. And again, we'll explain to you why we are so particular about those things. It ends up reflecting on your student's ability to take the test. So it's really, again, it's not about us, it's about your student's experience. Your exam dates, really on that form, you need to make sure that your exam is open in Canvas during that time, because we have a lot of people put their test in on their proctor form, and then they don't open it up in Canvas. So then a student comes down to the testing center and they don't have a test to take, it's not open. We don't have access to Canvas. We cannot get into your classroom in Canvas and do anything. We can't extend test times, we can't change dates, we can't mess with passwords. So this is really up to you guys to make sure those dates match up, okay? Include an announcement in your syllabus about whether the exam in your course will require a proctor, especially if you require an off-site proctor. And we have an off-site proctoring process, but you want to make sure that if you're in class and you require a proctor, your students know that. If you're online, your students know that they require a proctor. Just so you know too, off-site proctors typically do charge. So if they're close, they're really encouraged to come to our campus because then they're not charged. That makes sense. Okay? And then the last section is if you have handouts. We have a lot of programs that have tests that they need to look at EKGs and different pictures and things like that. Just make sure those are uploaded and they're uploaded to the correct sections. We have some faculty, which I think is a great idea, that give 2 different tests to 2 different sections so that there's no conversations after the 9 o'clock test. They can't go and talk to the students that are going to take the 1 o'clock test. But if you have handouts, make sure the handouts are the correct handouts so that when the student gets down there and picks up the handout, it's not, oops, I sent you the same handout for both sections, and they should have different handouts. And then the ATI exams, how many of you use ATI? Any of you? Okay, a couple of you do. We ask that you just send that in separately versus with like your exams for just your class, like your exam 1, exam 2, quiz 1, quiz 2, because those are a whole separate ballgame. And if you have questions about those specifically, let me know. Okay, any questions about the email that you get? It's pretty cut and dry, pretty easy to understand. I know, and it's so long, and it's like, don't forget to do this, and don't do that. Yeah.
No, for me, it's, I have to make those decisions already.
I know, yeah. And if you have feedback on that, or if there's a better way to do that, we welcome that feedback, because we don't always know what's going on. I mean, this is a great way for me to tell you what's going on our end, but we don't always know what's going on your end. It's the timing.
I think the hard thing is, like, I've not even, to be honest, we thought about spring semester.
I know.
yet.
Yeah.
And so to have
Yeah.
a syllabus,
Right.
The long
Yeah.
length of exam time.
and I think it's
Right.
also really hard for, like, I teach, 4 courses a semester. Next semester's 3 courses, but they're not the same.
Same, right. So you're in this
I have
mind
12
shift.
different courses per
Right,
year instead of
right.
like the same course over and over. So
Yeah.
There's no better
I don't think
way
there's a
for you
perfect-
guys.
Yeah.
But
Now the nice thing, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
These, the thing that they're requesting now
Mhm.
is separate than like accommodation needs, right?
Yes, and we're going to talk about accommodations.
Only if they use the testing center for testing solely.
Well, okay, that's a twofold question. If you just use and I'm going to talk about what we're going to be doing in Register Blast down the road. Hopefully this is going to be a really cool feature that might help people that are like, wow, I'm not even thinking about next semester. So you would fill this out now for spring. If you just do all your students' tests down there. But now all of a sudden you get an email from me with a letter saying, hey, I have an accommodation student. They need extended time. They need that quiet room. They're going to test in the testing center. Then you would go back to this form, but there's a link in the letter that I send you. So then you could click on the link, go to this form, and fill it out just for that accommodation student. And they know those are going to come later. Because typically, and again, I love feedback on this, typically what would happen is students, when I inherited it, and there's nothing wrong with this, but the person that was in this role would send all the accommodation letters out. So they'd check all their schedules for spring. Then they would go back and check their fall grades. Oops, they failed. Oh, now I got to check their spring because I have to re-register for classes. Now I have to resend all these letters out. And I'm like, I'm not checking somebody's schedule 3 times. I'm sorry. It's not that I'm lazy. I just don't have the time to do that. So I now wait, like tomorrow now, I will be checking grades. And then I will be sending letters out Friday. So that when you come back, then everything for accommodations will be done. If I've heard from students. That's a whole nother presentation. Yeah. Now with anybody who's not thinking of spring yet, which I totally get, down the road, Register Blast we might be able to lengthen the deadlines because Register Blast will allow us to eventually have you guys put your information in. Testing Center checks it. If it looks good, they click a button and it uploads all itself. So down the road, we're really gonna, so that might be the week that classes start. I can't speak for the testing center, but that'll be a lot less work on their end because right now what they do from this form, and that's just a small screenshot, is they actually have to retype. They print these forms off and then they have to retype every piece of information that you share in this form. And then they have to set the schedule up for each and every test. So that is why we kind of build it up over the break. But if we go with baby steps with Register Blast. We'll really be able to make this an easy process, hopefully, for everybody.
Already the online form is wonderful.
Oh, good.
Compared to what we used to have to do with that Word document.
Oh, good. So this works. That's good feedback. I think that's something that Lorna kind of established. So that's good to hear. But please, like I said, always give us feedback because we can always make it better. So just make sure you're filling it out completely and concisely. Make sure we're really looking for that preferred contact information because we do have evening tests and sometimes the password doesn't work or the test isn't open or we don't have the right handout or whatever it is, and we have to be able to get a hold of somebody. So we really want you to list your preferred contact so that we can text you, call you, email you, whatever that is, so that the student, again, standing there nervous about taking a test isn't like, oh God, now I only have 20 minutes to take the test because the testing center closes at 7, and we will obviously work with that student, but that is really helpful for us so that we can help that student. We need definitely the complete course ID again because they have to type it in because when the students go in to register, again, this is going to hopefully change down the road when we integrate with Canvas. But right now, when they go in and they say, I'm an online student and I'm a spring online student, when they go to register for an exam, every exam that is on this campus that is in the testing center shows up. So I was proctoring the other day and someone goes, well, I'm an EBI. I'm like, I don't know what that is. And they're like, well, EBI, it's EBI. And of course I'm like, what's your faculty's name? Okay, this is finals. I don't know what my faculty's name. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, we have bigger problems here. Yeah, bigger problems. And she's like, well, that girl over there is in the same class. I'm like, well, we can't go over there and ask her what test she's taking, So it's really important that you have this information, again, for the student's perspective, because they're going to get this list of tests. So they need to know, I'm in section 101. So that is very helpful for your student to schedule the right test. Now, they still sometimes schedule the wrong one, but that's okay. Then that's on them. Start date and end date, again, should be the same in Canvas. Your password. This is one area that I am begging you because we do fill in and we get the random number 8, capital H, lowercase a, capital P, lowercase p, capital Y. And we're like, oh my gosh, am I typing this in right? Am I doing, and when and I'm not, because I get nervous. Lorna and Carolina are great. They're very calm and mild-mannered. I get freaked out. I'm trying to put passwords in and there's literally sometimes a line of students. So you're trying to watch where they sit. You're trying to see what tests they're taking so that you can type the right password into the right computer because we have a control program that we take control of their screen. And then you're trying to figure out, there's like, and I'm not making this up, there's 12 R's in a row. So lowercase r's. So it looks like M's or N's, and you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're like, oh crap, I miscounted, and now I got to put this password in. Again, that's the extreme. But we really, I think there was a misconception. I worked with Andrea a lot my first year here, my first semester here, and she kept saying, well, the students will have the password, the students will have the passwords. And finally I was like, where are we getting this information that students get the password? She goes, well, you guys give it to them. I'm like, no, we do not. So please dispel that rumor. We do not give that to them. We type it in for them on a control program that we take over their computer. If for some reason that's down, we walk over to their computer, we stand in front of it, and we type it in. And then it shows up as dots. They don't even see it. So we have a lot of faculty, and I get it, cheating's an issue. I get that some people open up their tests for their class, or they give their class the password, because they're like, okay, the password's pink, and everybody types it in and they take their test, and then you change the password. Well, then you have a student that has a makeup, and you didn't tell the testing center that you changed the password. Or you make these really long passwords or words that we can't even pronounce, and it's like trying to type it in and we gotta reread it and look at it. We don't give the passwords out. We don't share those with anybody. We don't have access to change them. And so we really ask that you keep those, again, because your students waiting to log into the test. We have students we have a lot of students with anxiety issues, attention deficit disorders, our accommodation students, and they get nervous, and that adds to their anxiety. So the easier, the more simple they are, then the easier it is for you to remember. The other thing too is sometimes we have faculty or staff that are teaching that accidentally hit the space bar afterwards, and then all of a sudden we're like, this password's not working, and then we realize we have to hit the space bar or we work it out. But just, again, just be careful, try to keep it simple, would be great. And then time allowed. When you put the, it says how long is this test, 20 minutes, if it's a quiz, just put your 20 minutes in there. Don't, if you have an accommodation student, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute, don't say, oh, for that student, they get double time, so this would be 40 minutes. Just put your 20 minutes in there. Our new scheduling system accounts for that. So it's really awesome. So that's what's really great. So you just do the form as you would normally do. Any questions on the form? Yeah.
Some feedback on the form.
Yes.
On the radio buttons where they can have scratch paper and calculator.
Yes. Yes.
If you could add just an open text instruction field.
Oh.
Because I have tests each semester where they can take their coding books, their medical coding books.
Oh, yeah.
They're big, and so if there is one testing area that's bigger than others, I like to tell you that. And so
Awesome.
I end up putting it up in the,
I just did a small screenshot.
Yeah.
There's probably like a comment, I don't even think there's a comment. So you would like an open text field for other, and then something like that. Got it. And that's an easy fix. We can do that. We can even do that probably for spring.
Cool.
Yeah. If we can get Adam on that, that's
I'll bet
awesome.
you there's others that have something that doesn't fit into the radio button.
Joey.
We all keep it forward.
But we like the abnorm, so that's good. Okay. Okay, so this is 8 tips and I kind of asked the testing center, like, what are some things that you would really want staff and faculty to know before students take a test? So the first one is we really like the form to be completed completely and concisely, or accurately. Do not open closed tests in Canvas for a window of time. So you have access in Canvas to say, I want this student to take the test between 10 and 11 a.m. I will promise you that that student will come in at 9:55 and be ready to go. There will be nobody in line. They'll sit down at 2 minutes to 10 and be like, I can't get in, I can't get in, I can't get in. Or there will be a line out the door and they won't get in until 10:07 and they don't get their full hour. Open the test for an hour, but then open it from like 8 a.m. till noon and just give them 60 minutes. Do your minutes versus saying it's only open from 10 a.m. till 11 a.m. Because we have had a lot of students, again, if there's a line out the door or something, or the password doesn't work, or the student has to run to the bathroom really quick before they actually sit down and take the test. There's just a lot of things that can happen. And so we've really tried to tell faculty, don't open the test for a specific amount of time as far as from hour to hour. Just keep it 60 minutes in length. So if they start at 9:05, they have till 10:05. It just works better for them and you. If you open your test for a class, so let's say you test in your classroom, but you have an accommodation student downstairs. We've had this happen. And I think because you guys are focused and I get it. So then the test is done. You go back to your office and you close it. Well, you have somebody down the testing center that's still taking it. Well, that kicks them out of the test. So just keep that in mind. It's helpful to have, to know. Passwords are not shared with students. I talked about this already. Just, you really, unless you share it with your class to open up that test during your class period, technically unless you guys can give me a reason why you would need to change password, because I still don't understand this, why passwords would need to change. Yes?
You know, on offsite proctors, how that works. I had an offsite proctor, so I was a little nervous, and I didn't change the passwords, but now I'm wondering if I should or not, because I'm not sure if they all type it in, or do they give it out?
I've had both.
I wonder
I've had
about
them
that.
give them to.
Okay, so that's a really good point. So we could start stressing with our offsite proctors that they have to type them in.
I wondered about that.
Yep.
I tell them what it is.
That's what I was worried about.
Yep.
And I'm sure it depends on the site.
Another mistake I made once was I used the same password for each class that semester.
Yeah.
And I had a student in 2 of my classes.
Mm-hmm.
he was the one that the proctor gave him the password, so then in the
Oh.
other class, he thought,
Maybe it's the same.
And it was.
It was, okay.
So,
Now the one thing that so that helps me understand it, because I'm sitting there going, what? Because we have a lot of faculty who change their passwords, but then they forget to tell the testing center, and then the next student that comes in to test on a makeup or something. There is a way in Canvas, if I'm correct, Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, that if a student were to get into Canvas and have the password at like 8 o'clock at night and they go in and take it, then we have an academic integrity issue. Then you guys could go back and go, wait a minute, A, how'd you get the password? And B, why were you taking the test at 8 p.m. when it was due, in class today? So again, I don't want to open up that can of worms, but I love the offsite proctor piece. No, and I'll talk to the testing center and find out if we can require offsite proctors to put that password in. And then that would help a little bit, I think, on your guys' end too. If you do change your password, just make sure you let the testing center know. Just shoot them an email. It's, pretty quick. Be careful when you type and choose your passwords. Keep them simple. Try not to hit the space bar,
you don't have to mix letters and numbers and all that.
No, there's no, in fact, I don't know who it is, but there is one faculty who just does colors. It's great, because it's really easy. Is that you? Okay, it's so awesome. I had to proctor for finals, and I was like, oh, pink, I can remember that one. And I just would type it in for that, and it does make it easy. Or Yes, pink, blue, yellow, green, or somebody else does flowers. That's really easy, daisies, tulips, chrysanthemum, let's stick with daisies, roses, lilies, easy ones. There you go. This is another piece. Always use the testing center email. We know that a lot of you know Lorna, and that's great, and I hope that Lorna's been helpful, but we do have a new staff member, Carolina. She's part-time, but in the event, poor Lorna was out sick 2 days last week during finals. So if you send it to Lorna specifically, if there's an exception or there's a change, Carolina, I even get the testing center email. So send it to the testing center for sure. And then for extended times, for students with accommodations, be sure to extend your time in Canvas, because it's really easy to forget to do that piece of it. And again, we don't have access. I think a few years ago when they had eCollege or whatever the online learning, the testing center could extend the test time, but now in Canvas we can't. So we just like to help that out. So those are 8 tips for a better testing experience, both for your students and for you, and for our testing center. I get a lot of questions about students with accommodations who go down and use the testing center. So I want to give a little bit of information on this. They have to be approved for those accommodations. And I get a lot of emails about the 3rd week of school after the first test saying, I need extended time on tests. I'm so anxious when I take my tests. They have to provide documentation from a licensed healthcare professional, and it can't be on a script note. It has to be a letter. They have to provide their licensure number. There's a lot of things that are involved with it. They do have to do an intake interview with me, and then based on their diagnosed disability, which I never share with faculty or staff, we approve accommodations that work. I'm not going to give somebody, you don't have to take any tests, or you don't have to go to class or anything like that. It has to be reasonable and equitable, and it just levels the playing field. So you'll get a letter from me via email, which you'll also see like the student CC'd, you'll see accommodation. I keep records of everything. I CC myself, and then I also CC the testing center so they know. And then don't calculate time for if they have time and a half, only update their extra time in Canvas, because our Register Blast program will, if you say 20 minutes, our Register Blast will automatically, if it's a double time student, I go in and put all the accommodation students into the system, and then it automatically just double times it for them. So you don't have to worry about any of that. Okay, so here, reduced distraction spaces we have 3 of them. And we have a lot of students that need them, and I think we're just going to see more and more of that. Unfortunately, I say that because we're tight on space. We have a lot of students, and I get it, that need to test at the same time as their class does. So with that, we may have to work early and diligently to say, okay, what else can we do? Especially like during finals. We were gonna have to find a conference room for a student and an extra proctor just because there were 4 people that needed the low distraction space. The faculty was accommodating and said, okay, this student can take it like at 2:30 because the other students, you know, would be not done yet, but so there wouldn't be any conversations in the hallway. That's a big thing, and I know they talk because I'm in the Success Center and I know they talk. So you're absolutely right to have them test while the class is in. I get it. But we do ask for some partnerships on that because it is hard when we don't have enough spaces for our students. This is one that I need to talk about. We haven't had any students complain about it yet, but technically with our accommodation students, we have a lot of faculty who say, oh, well, my class starts at 9, my student needs double time, I want them to come in and test at 8 o'clock so that they get that extra hour and then they can be here for lecture after class or after their test. So the student gets double time. In the world of ADA, by asking them to come in early, actually you shouldn't be doing that. You should be altering when you offer lecture based on when that student can make it back to class. We have a lot of students that are like, well, I lost that time to study, I lost that time to sleep in, I lost that time to meditate, I lost that time to just be, and everybody else got that extra hour and a half. And now I have to go to the testing center. The testing center opens for students at 8:30. We will test students at 8, but we have had people ask us for 6:30, 7, 7:30. And it's technically you're not supposed to with accommodation students. The student's not supposed to be accommodating you as the faculty or staff teaching. You are supposed to be accommodating them. I haven't had any students complain yet. So you move forward, whatever you're gonna do, but know that 8 o'clock is the earliest in the testing center that they can come in. And if we start seeing a lot more of that, then we may have to try to make other arrangements, but so far it hasn't been a problem. And then we will schedule accommodation students on Monday mornings. I've heard some students say, well, I can't get in and test when my class is on. If a student who has accommodations needs to test with their class on a Monday morning, we will schedule them. They can't schedule it. We are closed on Monday mornings for staff development, staff meetings. They do webinars. Again, you have to speak, you can actually speak above a whisper in there. But we know there are classes that meet on Monday mornings, and we will schedule those students down there to take their tests if they need to. So please know that we're definitely, the accommodations comes first. So, any questions on accommodations? I think that was a whole nother presentation. I was like, wow, what do I do? Do I do accommodations or do I do testing? No? Great. Okay, and then I think most of you have heard of Register Blast. It's a new scheduling system. It's worked so far really well. I don't want to jinx it, I'm going to knock on wood. As of December 20th, I just saw the email, we're going to integrate with OneLogin. That's our next baby step so that students, basically they'll log into OneLogin and there will be a tile for Register Blast. We have a lot of students using their Gmail account and their Yahoo account, or they're capitalizing their first and last name in their Clarkson email, and then they have 2 accounts in Register Blast because it will read those emails differently. But if they go through OneLogin to get to Register Blast, then they're going to have nice, clean registration access to their Register Blast account. Down the road, we're going to integrate with Canvas. And that'll be even better because then instead of seeing that huge long list of tests that are available to all students, they're only going to see the tests that they're registered for those classes. So again, baby steps. The company just integrated with learning management systems like this last summer. So we thought, we're going to let the bugs work out. So maybe by this summer we'll integrate with that. So that'll be good. And then the next, maybe even in conjunction with that, it'll be using the faculty form a little bit differently so that it's just a click of the button to say, yep, this faculty filled everything out correctly, no questions, we're going to upload it. And then if there are questions, and then down the road it might just be the faculty uploading the forms. You'd still just fill the form out and it would just upload on its own. You wouldn't have to do anything extra. This is definitely better reporting. It's awesome for accommodation students because those reduced distraction space rooms Before, it was a manual thing, and we're like, oh, okay, this student's in this room from this time to this time. Oh, they get time and a half. Okay, so how do we put this person in this room? Now, if a student has reduced distraction and double time, that room isn't even available if I were to go in and try to schedule that room. So the system kind of does it. Now, we've had a few glitches, and we're working through them, but for the most part, it has been awesome. That's why we also encourage students to register in the testing center early. And then, like I said, single sign-on and Canvas will be coming. So it's been a really great system. They've been really great to work with. So any questions about this piece? Also,
I think an assignment in their first week to register for their test.
Great.
Because I said, we're up against the nurses.
Yeah, seriously, get them in there early. Yeah, there are.
That's an assignment.
Yes, that's awesome. That's a great idea. Yeah, now you'll just send them to one login, so it'll be great. The other piece of this too down the road, I know there's some faculty that really like to know, like, when did this student take this test, or did they register for the test? There is some faculty reporting pieces that they're working on learning. They don't want to just say, oh, here's a link to this. Lorna and Carolina want to be able to look at you and say, hey, here's a link and here's how you run the reports. So they're still learning. We've only had it for a semester. So those things will really kind of be unfolding for you guys here pretty soon. But if you ever have a question about like if a student registered for a test or not, just call them or email them and they'll look it up. It's so much easier in the system to find information. So, and then last but not least, contact information. You guys hopefully know how to get a hold of all of us, but in the event you don't, I love the feedback. I love, because again, you guys are seeing it from another perspective than what I'm seeing it from and what the testing center is seeing it from. So we want to know the feedback. We really do. And if we can change it, we will. If we can't, I'll explain why we can't.